everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 8 of The Great Pretender. And I've really liked this case so far. Singapore Sky, I've really enjoyed it. It is definitely a different case than our very first one with Cassano, right? But getting to know the two brothers, Clark and Sam, I feel like Sam has a crush on Abbie. I feel like Clark has a crush on Abbie. And I feel like Clark is kind of like the bumbling brother that he's very complicit in what Sam does, but he seems like he's not totally on the up and up of what Sam has been planning and doesn't quite realize that Sam has really been rigging these races for Clark to win. I would assume Clark's not entirely dumb, that he kind of gets what's going on, but he doesn't know maybe the full extent of how far Sam is willing to go to make sure that his brother is the hero and his brother wins and that they get richer and richer off these races, right? Sam is definitely the mastermind behind everything, and Clark is just the pretty boy that doesn't make him any less guilty because he's complicit in all of it, and you would think he'd put 2 and 2 together, but he definitely has a more innocent vibe to him, and Clark wanting Abigail to race against him, having a crush on her, like it's very interesting. But what's more interesting is the dynamic that's developed between Abigail and Edamura. I really like Makoto and Abbie developing this kind of, not exactly a friendship, but it is a friendship, but Makoto being concerned about her and her mental well-being, us getting a little bit of backstory about Abbie, seeing a little bit into her past, maybe why she's influenced to do the way that the things that she does, and then Laurent at the end being like, no, she wants to die. She is doing all of this just to try and seek the thrills until it takes her out. And it's like, and Makoto's like, well, we're not going to have that. So I don't know how long this case will be. The last one was 5 episodes. We're on episode 3 of this case. So I don't know. I feel like this episode would be the ending though, right? Unless maybe it's a 4-episode case and it's just going to have our big climax leading up in this one and then resolve in the next one. I don't know how I can see it going to 5 episodes like the other one, but we'll see, right? We shall see. But Laurent has got his claws like wrapped around Makoto. He wants to keep him in the game. And Makoto, bless his heart, he has a heart of gold, but like Laurent says, he very much is suited for the life of a con man. So I've really enjoyed this series. Every episode is it's wonderful, it's colorful, the animation's stunning, and I really like the character work that's at play and the mystery that builds alongside what's going on. So we'll see, right? But I'm really enjoying this series, so I hope you all are too. But we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to dive right into The Great Pretender and just see what happens. So we are going to start episode 8 of The Great Pretender, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. I am floored by how fast that episode went, because I was getting so sucked into the episode, I didn't look down at the timer, I didn't look down at anything to see how long we had. I was just like, oh, and we get that last shot of Abbie at the end of the Ferris wheel or whatever, and I was like, oh, it's fine. We'll just have her and Lewis have a conversation maybe. And then it just cuts to the ending. I'm like, wait, it's over? Oh my gosh, this episode was great. Definitely, okay. I can see it being a 5-episode case now. I can see that. I can see that being the case, absolutely. Because, yeah, it's interesting. There's different things I want to happen in this case specifically, because I think it'd be great character work for Abbie, and I want her and Makoto to get closer, but she's very bad. She is definitely like a cat that you're trying to give a bath to. She's like having none of it. And we get a lot of little tiny nods to the characters in this and what they think about themselves, how they are positioning themselves. It's all rather interesting, right? But man, I love at the start of this, there's lots of little things that you wonder, okay, what is Laurent doing? What is Makoto doing? Who's playing who? Are they playing each other? Makoto is like bound and determined. He wants to kind of be a therapist to Abbie, and Abbie's like, I'm not going to therapy. And so we'll put Abbie here. We'll put Abbie here. And we'll put Makoto here. We'll put Laurent here. I want to put Clark here and get Sam up on here. aka Mike Portnoy. Isn't Mike Portnoy, isn't he the character in Tropic Thunder that's played by Jack Black? Isn't that Mike Portnoy? I feel like that's a character from Tropic Thunder. I love that movie so much, and I feel like Mike Portnoy is the character that Jack Black plays. I could be wrong. I know Portnoy is, right? And then we're going to put Cynthia here. Okay. And we'll put Lewis and stuff down here with Abbie. But Makoto he seems like he's concerned for Abbie, right? And that's not from Laurent or anybody. He genuinely wants to know what's up with Abbie. He's like, I want to understand you. I want to know what's up. You want to talk about it. And Abbie's just like, no, you wouldn't understand. And there's the whole thing with the ballerina, the capsule toy. And she just kind of tosses it away. I was really wondering if it was going to be like a trigger, that it would trigger her thinking something of her past, but it does not seem to be the case, right? She just kind of like tosses it aside. Abbie is she's very stubborn. She's very stubborn, and I feel like she can't really relate to anybody in the crew, but she seems to relate, put that down here, she seems to relate to Lewis. And she wants to know about him and about his past specifically, right? She wants to know about his past as an ex-soldier because of all the people here that she can relate to, he's the one. She's like, oh, he maybe is going through the same type of dark shadows and traumas that I'm going through. I want to talk to him because I feel like maybe she just needs to talk to somebody that's similar to herself, right? So there's that. But yeah, Makoto just being like, oh, come on, just take this. I like that Makoto, his hair is kind of like down. It's kind of like frumpy in this episode, which kind of reflects his mood. His hair almost reflects how he's feeling. I really expect her to have more of a reaction to the ballerina, but she just tosses it away. And she's like, if you've got something to say, spit it out. And he's like, well, let's be friends. And she's like, no. He's like, well, you can talk to me if you ever want to talk about anything. She's like, why would I do that? So she's putting up all the barriers, all the walls, and is not having any of it, right? So we cut to the idea of the underground casino. So their plan, which I have a theory about that plan. Their plan to con him out of the money is to do the underground casino, right? Is to do the underground casino, and from that, they're going to have him bet all his money on Abigail. Which, that doesn't make sense to me. That part of the con, I'm like, he wants his brother to win. He scripts it for his brother to win. So why would he bet all his money on Abbie? I feel like that's the disconnect, and that's the part of the case. I'm like, how are they going to convince him to bet all his money on Abbie when she's not, when he wants Clark to win? I feel like he's going to try, that Sam is going to try to take Abbie out because he's worried about her outdoing his brother. So I'm like, why would he bet all the money on Abigail? I don't know how they're going to pull off that part of the con. That seems like the big thing. Like, how are you going to get him to put all his money on her? I don't know. My only thing is, if he ends up, the funny thing is if he puts all his money on Clark, or I don't know how that'll work, because part of me would think he puts all of his money on Clark and Abigail just happens to find a way to win in the end and outdo him, and that's how he loses his money. But that's the opposite of what they're wanting him to do for the con. So I don't understand, right? Unless they're going to get Abigail to lose and then Clark wins in the end. But why would he? I don't know. I don't know how they're going to pull off that part of the con. I'm probably not going to wait before watching the next episode because I want to know what's going to happen between her and Lewis. I feel like her and Lewis are going to have a conversation. But that part of the con, I'm like, I don't know how they're going to pull that off. So, yeah, they say here, I want to go back to this and say we're going to bring Sam here and get him to bet all in on Abbie, and then it'll be over and Abbie lets Clark win on purpose. And Makoto's like, what's perfect about it? Like, that doesn't sound like he's going to fall for that at all. Yeah, Abigail's like, no, that's not good. And Makoto's like, he's not going to go for it. And then I like that Cynthia and Laurent say they're going to force him to do it, but I'm like, that doesn't make sense either. So this con is kind of, it's a little flimsy. I'm like, how are they going to pull this off? Cynthia is relying on her looks. But I was like, girl, did you not see in the last episode that he wants nothing to do with you? He says he's only interested in girls under 20, which, hot. But I'm like, Cynthia is relying upon her good looks for all this. I feel like she's in this like middle ground between old Kim over here, who's like, I could be sexy. And it's like, no, not in the way that you were once before, perhaps. But she's kind of in denial with it. I love that she thinks it's going to work. And I'm like, no, that doesn't end up working at all. My favorite, though, is when she just sits there and stomps the pillow and calls him a brat and then makes Makoto hold it while she drop kicks the pillow. That part's great. I love that part of this episode. Like, so that doesn't work. Like, all their plans are getting foiled pretty handedly. And Makoto's like, how can you just be fine with this? As she, like, drop kicks him. And then Laurent's like, well, Abbie could seduce Sam. And she's like, no. And then Laurent's like, no choice. It's up to you, Edamura. Edamame. But I like how the implication in that moment is that Laurent is like, okay, well, you'll seduce him, Abbie. And she's like, absolutely not. And he's like, okay, well, Makoto. And Ed's like, are you serious? And he's like, oh, no, you're not seducing him. Laurent's like, I'm not going to put you in that position, Edamura. The only person you get to seduce is me. So Laurent is interesting because it seems like he plays naive or dumb in this case. And I don't know if he's doing that to string Edamura along because he got the guards to jump Makoto. But there was a reason for that, because when Makoto goes back to Sam and Clark, he's like, well, you guys tried to jump me. And they were like, what? And it was very believable because Edamura actually believed that. Because Laurent didn't correct him. He's like, oh, you just keep thinking what you're thinking. We'll use that against Sam and Clark, which they do. He knew all the time. So I'm like, Laurent, what else are you keeping from Makoto that you're not telling him, that we, the audience, are going to have to find out through him? I also want to point out that Laurent, this entire time, he has like his 2 buttons of his polo undone. It's like 1 button too many, right? And he's like, didn't you learn to become a mechanic for some reason? So they're like, how can I infiltrate him? And they're like, well, we will have a guy come in that can vouch for your skills as a mechanic. And so we meet Louis and his wife, Isabelle. Now, I don't know if I trust Isabelle all the way. I don't know. I'm curious about Isabelle because we get some things about her in this episode that I'm like, I don't know how to feel about her. Because she's like, oh, nice to meet you all. And so then they get Louis in there and explain what the situation is. And he says, you want me to help you swindle. And he's like, Laurent, the bad guy role is usually done by the good guys. He's like, the bad guy role is usually done by the good guys who force themselves to be bad. We shouldn't involve him. So what's interesting here is that Louis, he wants Sam and Clark dead. Not just swindled. It's funny, it's kind of like he thinks swindling is underhanded, but outright just murdering him is justice. I'm like, well, okay. I'm watching Vinland Saga at the same time, and I just watched an episode where this exact same conversation came up. The idea that a battle with swords and bloodshed is justice, but poisoning somebody or doing something underhanded, that's a little bit crooked. So it's like, what in the world? Like, it's funny that we're having those 2 same through lines happening in these 2 shows. But he wants Sam and Clark taken out for what they've done. And it's clear that Louis is struggling by what's happened to him because flying was his life and it's been taken from him, and he's having to take pills to regulate his mood, regulate his, pain and everything. He can't fly. It's just, and when I feel like Makoto, when he was like, thank you for coming all this way in a wheelchair, I was like, that's such an odd line. But again, their apartment doesn't look entirely accessible, so maybe it's something to do with that. But he really didn't have a choice. And he says, kill him after stealing his money and surround the carefree younger one and maul him. I'll help if you do that. And Cynthia's like, that's not how we do things. Yeah, they're like, we don't kill anyone. Like, Cynthia's like, we're more of a Robin Hood sort of thing. We don't really kill anybody if we don't have to. What's curious is I was expecting Lewis, when she said this, I was expecting Lewis to be like testing them and saying, oh, okay, well, you guys aren't going to kill him. I was just wanting to confirm you're not complete monsters. So yeah, I'll help. But he really doesn't. He says bankrupting them is not enough. He's like, it's not going to bring, he's like, he made my body end up like this. It's not going to be enough. And he says to burn his aircraft in his venue. And that's when Isabelle tells him to calm down. And so Laurent's like, well, there's nothing we can do if he's not interested. He's like, thanks. And that's when Isabelle offers to help. Or, well, she doesn't offer. He makes Isabelle do it. He's like, I'm not going to be involved in the swindling. He's like, you can help if you want, Isabelle. And she's like, oh, really? What? And so then we have the case. So this thing with the mechanic, I'm like, did Laurent pay off the mechanic Kevin to leave? Did Laurent pay Kevin off to go? Because he asks to go home. And he says, a fire broke out in my house in London. And they're like, Kevin, calm down. He's like, Dick was in my room. He's like, aren't you single? I like that Kevin, whenever he says Dick was in my room, a fire broke out. I do like hashtag open-minded for Clark. Because Clark's not like, oh, your partner's okay? I thought you were single. Look at Clark. Look at Clark being all open-minded. Look at him. And he's like, no, Dick's my blue iguana. He's like, I never should have left London. And Sam's like, what the hell? He's like, blue iguana? He's like, if you leave now. And then he goes. He's like, I can't do it anymore. My blue iguana. Poor Dick. And then, like clockwork, that's when Makoto and Isabelle show up. So I'm sure that they paid off Kevin to go. I'm sure they're like, we need you to get out of the picture, Kevin. So they'll need a mechanic, and then we can come in and get it. It was almost like too perfect timing, though. And I feel like Sam is onto them, kind of, but he also, his ego gets in the way. And so he kind of lets his ego take over. If he had thought about it, I think a little bit more, he would have been like, this seems rather fishy. But he gets his ego stroked about the casino because he likes gambling, and it's all over from there. But I really like Clark's character. I like Clark's character more and more as this episode and this case goes on. And it makes me kind of feel bad for him because you get the impression that Clark knows the races are rigged, which does make him complicit, does make him an accomplice in all of this. But Clark, his heart's kind of in the right place. Like, I don't feel like I feel like if Clark knew that Sam had hurt Lewis, he would judge his brother a bit because he doesn't seem to know. Because at this point, they make the comment where Isabelle, he's like, oh, Isabelle, he remembers her, of course, because she's a lady. And he's like, it's Lewis's wife. And she says, hello. And of course, you know, she's older than 20, so Sam doesn't care. And she says he can't move much. I like we don't see Sam's face during this scene until he turns around and says the accident was unfortunate. Like, it's just framing that moment. And he's like, and again, he's kind of a little bit snarky about it. He's like, well, I'm sorry about your husband's accident, but you know, danger comes with the sport. Like, he's remorseful seemingly, but then he adds that little snark at the end, being like, but that's what he gets for messing with us, the brothers. And she said, and then of course, I love that Makoto pretends to be the bad boy, right? He is the hand of God, the bad boy mechanic. I love it. I love Makoto being all sassy. It's fun. It's a great time. But she's like, he used to be a mechanic for our team. And they're like, oh, what a coincidence. We need one of those. He's like, I've been on Lewis's team since the Australia tournament. And then says he's still young and he's talented. And that's why I brought him here to find work. Yeah, in his suit and everything, ready to go. But it hasn't gone well. And then, of course, Makoto's like, it's inevitable. The accident severely injured him. I doubt it was our fault, though. I like that so Makoto is pointing out, because he's supposedly this mechanic, he's like, well, I know it wasn't our plane that did it, without telling Sam that they know that they're the cause of the accident, not them. And he's like, what's this about? He says, our engine was tampered by an outsider. And I like that Clark at this moment kind of goes, like his eyebrows subtly raised, like tampered with. So Clark is maybe learning about his brother's dealings. I wonder too if maybe Clark will throw the race himself, if he'll throw the race and let Abbie. I wonder if that's going to be the case. They're going to try to get him to bet all in on Abbie. He's going to be like, no, bet all in on his brother. And they're like, what do we do? And then Abbie's going to try to beat him. And I wonder if he lets her win in the end because he realizes what his brother's done. And he feels bad about it and has like a guilty conscience. I don't know. Maybe that will be the case. Maybe it will be the case. And maybe that'll be Laurent's plan all along. But then, of course, we have... I love Clark's character design, the blue eyes and everything. He's so handsome. And he's just looking at him like, what's going on? Like, he can't put two and two together. But Sam's like, this is ridiculous. And so then Cynthia and Abbie show up and they play the con. Like, oh, no, we're going to hire Makoto. And Clark's like, well, no, we want to hire him. We need a mechanic. And I like that Sam is like, we don't really need one. We'll be fine without him. Like, who cares if he works for the other team? But Clark's like, oh, no, we need somebody. So we cut back to the room with all them in it. And again, visual symbolism. You have Louis by himself in the dark next to the window, away from everyone because he's in solitude, right? That's how he's represented. And then you have everybody else around Isabelle, and she says it's her first time acting. That was like the first clue of, is it? And then Laurent says women are natural born actresses. I'm like, mm-hmm. So Laurent, his view of women as natural born actresses. I wonder if that has anything to do with the ring around his neck that he showers with, right? That he doesn't take off his person at any time. We do not know. But he's like, and I like that Laurent, she's married. Her husband's in the next room. And he's like, I could teach you more thoroughly if you like. And then Cynthia's like, you can ignore him. Just forget about him. And so then she says that she's leaving. Or he says he's leaving because the pills wore off. And she's like, I left them in the room. And he leaves to go. And then she calls him a child and leaves. And he says, let us know if there's anything that we can do. And Abigail seems to watch him leave the entire time. Like, she is wanting to connect with him. To ask, like, why did he do the things that he did and go off script? What was the reason behind it? Right? So and that's when she asked, why did you betray Sam and try to win? And she's like, that's true. If you stuck to the script, you'd still be flying. And then he just flips him off, which again is a very Abbie-like gesture. So Abbie, of course, is probably like, I want to know why he did this. Like, why didn't he stick to the script? Why did he not go along with it? What's the deal? Right? He had to have had a reason. I feel like she thinks that reason is going to connect to her somehow. And she wants to know more of the reasoning why. And Isabelle being like, because he's stupid. He'll always be a kid. I mean, obviously, if they're asking why Louis did it, maybe it was just because he was tired of swindling. He says he doesn't like swindling, and that's essentially what he was doing by not going with the script. He was cheating the system, and even if he was getting paid, it wasn't an honest win, right? And then that's when Laurent says maybe because he's a hot-blooded ex-soldier. Now, he says that to Cynthia when Abbie's not looking, but I'm like, did Laurent share info knowing that Abbie was there? because she confronts him in the shower later. Laurent does a lot of behind the scenes working in this episode where it seems like he's just taking seeds and just throwing them everywhere, being like, yeah, this will all come into play later. Laurent like plants a lot of little tiny seeds in this episode that I'm like, where is that going? What are you planning to do with this? How is this going to shape up, right? And then they say Lewis's machine was tampered with, causing an accident. That means he planned to rebel from the start. So, but the fact that Sam knew about it means that someone ratted him out. So then Laurent says, who knows? But Makoto's over here like us being like, no, let's dig a little deeper in this mystery. Let's solve this, shall we? So I'm wondering, is she the one that ratted him out? We don't know. We don't know if that is the case. We are not privy, but something tells me there's more to this than meets the eye. And he's like, we need to focus on our work instead. And then he's like, I'm going to walk around the pit later. I love that Laurent, as Makoto's saying, I'm going to walk around the pit later. Laurent's just sipping his champagne, smiling, smirking like the devil he is. He knows what's going to happen when he goes to that pit. He probably wishes he was there to see Makoto running. That devil. And so then Clark's like, we need more mechanics. And Sam's like, no, we can't have members on the team that we can't trust. He's like, what do you think of the Japanese guy? And that's when Sam says he's cheeky, but he's not a bad person. Now, when Sam says you're a bad judge of character, maybe that is the idea that because Sam, he's good-hearted to the point where he's naive. And Sam says that he is a bad judge of character. Meaning that Makoto is not a nice person. Makoto is actually a swindler like Sam. And Sam's like, oh, you think that he's good, but he's not. And even if you lack one mechanic, there's no problem. And then that's when Clark's like, yes, I know I'll win. He downs his whiskey. He's like, of course I will. And I get the impression that Clark is a little bit disheartened that the race is scripted. Like, he wants to win fairly, and so he feels kind of bad that he's like, this stupid race is scripted. I'm not winning because I'm good. I'm winning because you're letting me. He's like, everything is scripted. And then Sam's like, well, are you complaining about it? And then that's when he calls out to his brother. And he's like, is that how I look? I just really like Clark's character. Clark's character's grown on me a lot in this because he's not inherently a bad person. His brother has a big ego and is disgusting, but Clark is not. He's just kind of a himbo. He just is. He's just kind of a himbo, and you're like, aw. You're like, okay, look at you. Obviously, he's still an accomplice in this giant fraud scam, but he's not a menace like Sam is. And that's when Sam's like, he answers his phone. So we have Laurent in the shower. He's got the ring. And then Abbie shows up. And then Laurent diffuses any situation with some kind of sexual gesture. Where he's like, oh, this girl's watching me in the shower. You want to join? And she's like, knowing full and well that Abbie would absolutely not. Right? She's like, no. Instead, she wants to know about Lewis and if he was telling the truth. She says, is Lewis an ex-soldier? And then he's like, who said that? And she said, you did. She's like, show me the files. You looked into him, right? And he says, I'll show you if you give me a towel. Like, Laurent's like, okay, let me dry off here. So then Makoto, I'm like, he's looking at the pit to see, like, what it all looks like and everything. And that's when he's jumped by the guys that Laurent knew was coming after him. I was so confused for a second. I was like, because Laurent doesn't seem concerned when he goes and tells him about it. Laurent's like, no, isn't that funny? I'm like, shouldn't you be concerned if he was like nearly captured by his goons and he's onto him? But that's not the case at all. I'm just like, what the hell? And he's like, they're probably Sam's. The moment he's saying they're probably Sam's minions, how savage can he be? Laurent's like, that's actually me. I think it was actually me that was doing that. But okay, you can make these horrible stereotypes about Sam all you want, but it was me doing it. I'm like, ah! Because, yeah, I was confused in that moment. And Cynthia doesn't seem to know either. And then Laurent was just fueling the fire, getting Makoto all stoked up, because Makoto is surprisingly a good actor when he's not even trying to be. And that gets Sam to go along with it, right? And so he fixes up the plane. I was honestly wondering if Sam was going to call him out, because Makoto's just average. He's not an amazing mechanic at all. And so I was like, isn't he going to call him out about that and say something? But it's when the Kim woman, and my dog is like choking on a toy over here. It's when he's like, okay, fine, I'm going to go work for Cynthia. And so the other guys, I'm sure, were hired by Laurent after Clark does the trial, which is not anything, it's 125, which is not anything crazy. The guys like come to talk him up, which I'm sure Laurent hired to talk him up to make Makoto look like he'd done a good job. And Makoto offers some like BS excuse of why his plane wasn't going fast enough. And I'm like, Sam's been in this industry long enough. I feel like he could see through that. But then he says what my brother said was, he's cheeky, but not a bad guy. He's like, I'm different. It's strange of me to say this, but I am a bad guy. I'm wicked by nature. And my nose can smell the difference. And he's like, I know that you are the same as me. You're wicked. So yeah, so Sam claims that he is a bad guy. And he knows that Makoto is bad too. He's like, you just seem like the same type of person as me. He's like, I'm a good judge of character. Probably why he's been avoiding Cynthia as well, right? And I love that Makoto is just always afraid that something is about to go terribly wrong. Like, he just always has like the worst poker face. And then Clark and Sam are like, who are these guys? And then that's when Kim shows up and puts him down on the ground. And he's like, aren't these your men? And he's like, no. Again, it was to make Makoto act as genuinely as possible. And it works. It's like Laurent knows exactly what he's doing. And then we have the idea of the underground casino met. And it's like his scheme was to bet on Lewis, the dark horse. That was going to be the case. And that's basically the same as killing Lewis. Am I wrong? And that's when they're about to take him away. And Sam says, no, how much? How much can I buy this trash for? Because Sam believes that Makoto is the exact same as him. So we get this scene between Clark and Makoto where they're there. And Clark, he's like, I was saved. He's like, although the Lewis stuff is pretty complicated. And he's like, I'm glad that we could invite you. Like, he's so nice. Like, Clark's just a nice guy. And so he's like, I love people. And that's when Sam says, I love people like me, people who are bad like me. I can trust them more than people who act virtuously. But I'll hire you only on one condition. And he's like, I want you to take me there to the underground casino. And I like that Clark is like, just, you're so hard to be around. He's like, brother, bro, like, seriously? Because, yeah, he stuffs his shirt. He, stuffs his shirt so he looks like he has a beer gut. I was like, what the hell? And puts the hat on backwards. It does not look good on him. He should have just left his hair down. Honestly. But then they go to and then, of course, Kudo is there at the underground casino. And Laurent looks pretty good with his hair all slicked back. He looks all right. He's got it all smoothed back. It looks pretty good. And they take him to the VIP section. And we find out Kudo has been working on his English. He's been working on his English to make it better. Laurent looks nice with the hair slicked back. He's like, I wanted to join the team, so I studied like a madman. I'm like, oh, Kudo, he wanted to be part of the squad. And then Laurent, he says his pronunciation is better than yours. And then he's like, don't talk to me with that grin on your face. And he's like, why is he mad? I was like, why do you think, Laurent? And he's like, Kim and those gangsters. And he's like, oh, wasn't that fun? They attacked you because of miscommunication. And then, yeah, they basically have Sam, there in the VIP room. We're going to trap him with Turkish food in this bottomless swamp. We're going to drench him. Interesting. I mean, he does seem like he's having a great time. I'm like, I wonder if that's Sam's weakness is the idea of gambling, because when the women don't work, then we'll just resort to the gambling. So that's interesting. But yeah, and then we cut back to Abbie, who's on the Ferris wheel looking at the ballerina on the metal. And then that's the end of the episode. So yeah. So basically, it's interesting that Clark is... what the best part about this is kind of the big double play that they play with Makoto. They're like, the team disbanded and I'm in the red because of this guy. And Clark asking what Makoto did, saying he egged Lewis on, saying the planes are on equal footing and it's a battle of skill. Knowing that he was baited by the challenge and now look at him. So it's interesting, right? I do like Clark's character. I feel like I'm going to feel a little bit bad for Clark at the end of this because I think Sam and him are going to end up in a lot of trouble. But Sam, I don't feel bad for. I don't feel bad for Sam at all because he's so egotistical and kind of gross. But Clark, I do feel a little bit bad after this episode. I'm like, he's an accomplice for sure, which is not good. And he knows his brother's doing something bad, and he lets him, which is not good. But at the end of the day, I do feel a little bit bad for Clark because he's not a terrible person. He just is complicit in all of this, which I guess can be just as bad. But yeah, more mystery with Laurent and that ring that doesn't leave his side. Abbie, I felt like I should have wrote more for her character over here on Whiteboard Coon. But basically, I feel like I was expecting Abbie in this episode to break down and go talk with Lewis and figure out what his deal is and connect it to her character and that lead to something happening in the episode plot-wise. But now this episode is over, the fastest episode in the world, I feel like it's going to happen next episode instead. So this spot on Whiteboard Coon is going to have to be reserved for next week when I think we're going to get the conversation between her and Lewis before the race of Abbie versus Clark. The question is, are we going to wrap up this case next episode, or are we going to carry it over into episode 10? I don't know. But man, this was literally the fastest episode of this series so far. I was so enthralled being like, okay, what are we doing? Laurent is hiding things from Makoto still. No shocker there. The question is, how much does Cynthia know about all this? She seems like she knows a lot. I feel like that Laurent keeps her in the know pretty well because he needs her to. But then, yeah, how's this underground casino and this planning going to work? I feel like we got to touch on that next episode. So maybe this will go to episode 10. I don't know. But I'm pretty excited to find out. So I don't know if I can wait to watch episode 9. I just don't know. So in the meantime, though, I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I hope you enjoyed this reaction discussion. Please stay safe. Take care. But yeah, I'm excited and I'm looking forward to being back and talking with y'all next week about The Great Pretender episode 9. Bye.